Welcome. This is Evil, a horror fiction podcast. Produced and narrated by me, Dennis Sarah. Evil Podcast can be found on almost any podcast player, whether it be Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or even Spotify. If you'd like to hear past episodes, you can go to evilpodcast.com. Evil Podcast is made possible by its generous listeners. If you enjoy the stories you hear on Evil Podcast, please go to evilpodcast.com. Hit the donate button. Any amount is really appreciated. If you like, you can become a Patreon as well. If you go to patreon.com/evilpodcast or directly through evilpodcast.com and donate a small amount every month. Since Halloween, Evil Podcast changed its format. Our current format is a monthly audio horror magazine. Every month, I like to highlight 2 horror writers. This month is no different. This month's 2 stories are Answer the Phone by Morgan K. Tanner and Apartment 13 by Brian J. Smith. You can almost say that this episode has a theme to it, apartment living. Both stories take place with neighbors in close proximity. Since the change of format back in October, I'm taking all the old Evil Podcast episodes and putting them on Patreon. Most of those episodes are either a twisted history or stories I wrote myself. I'm going to take those down and put those on Patreon. If you're listening to this in the future and if you're ever curious of where Evil Podcast came from and its evolution, become a Patreon. For as little as $1 a month, you can get all those little episodes that you can't hear on the podcast players now. Evil Podcast is also taking submissions. If you've got a short horror story, anywhere from 1,500 to 4,500 words, go ahead and send it to me. You can go to evilpodcast.com and send me an email from there. I prefer text format. Other ways you can get a hold of me: you can go to Facebook at facebook.com/evilpodcast, on Twitter at Dennis Sarah. But without further ado, let's get to our stories. Our first story is Answer the Phone by Morgan K. Tanner. Morgan is a writer, a drummer, a golfist, currently residing in the English countryside. The idyllic surroundings make it an ideal place to write, drum, and hide the bodies. The busy sound of the typewriter is perfect to drown out the hum of the antiquated torture equipment. His works of fiction and threats have appeared in the mailboxes of many a celebrity, who then sell the stories to the tabloids, claiming they have been terrorized. You can praise or indeed abuse him by visiting morganktanner.com. That's all one word, Morgan K. Tanner. Or you can find him on Twitter at morgantanner666. And here's his story, Answer the Phone. For the last 5 hours and 33 minutes, there has been an incessant ringing of a telephone from the apartment above me. Now, I'm not an angry man by nature, but this is seriously agitating my inner calm, trying to evoke some raw, primal aggression that I was previously unaware existed. It's coming from where that weirdo lives upstairs, unwashed, unshaven, un-everything else enduring. He's been up there wandering around, clomping his heavy boots through my ceiling, just ignoring that damn phone. I know he can hear it. How could he not? It rings, and it rings, and it rings. That high-pitched shrill that was all that rage back in the 80s. I can almost see the clunky plastic lump with its circular dial and loop cord. I can not only hear it vibrating along with the ringing, I can feel it all around me. I've tried banging on the ceiling with my umbrella. I've tried shouting. I've even tried some kind of mind control technique to will him to answer it. But of course, none of it has done a damn thing. Still, it rings. Ring, 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 ring. There's a gentle tapping at my front door. I'm surprised I noticed it. The old lady from next door says, "Excuse me, dear. Would it be possible to stop that banging?" She seems regretful having asked me that. Her eyes plead with me to go easy on her, as though I'm about to bang the umbrella against her wrinkled face. I'm holding it like a baseball bat, and I'm sure my eyes display anger. I compose myself with a deep breath. "Yeah, sorry about that. It's just that ringing phone upstairs. Can you not hear it?" The old lady, Mrs. Something, definitely a Mrs. Although she lives alone with her cats now, she seems the sort that would have had a husband at some stage. Mrs. Whatever, pleased I'm not about to attack her, places her palm behind her ear and frowns. Her hearing aid squeaks, sounding like one of her cats that just lost a limb. "No, it all seems quiet." The ringing is even louder out here in the corridor, as though there are invisible speakers embedded in the walls. "What do you mean, quiet?" I snap. Although she doesn't seem to notice and carries on listening, her eyes darting this way and that. "Okay, you know what? Fine. I'll stop banging." I slam the door in her face. She doesn't deserve that, I know, but this ringing is doing something to me. I storm into the kitchen with my shoulders rigid and my hands morphing into fists. I pull back an arm, but then stop myself. Would punching the wall make me feel any better? Would it silence that damn phone? Ring, 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 ring. It's 3 p.m. and I'm tired. My eyes are pleading with me to rest a while. My itchy corneas are attempting to draw down my fluttering lids. But what would be the point? I couldn't sleep through this. Reading hasn't helped. The drivel that isn't daytime TV hasn't either. I'd even put on some music, but whatever I'd listened to, the ringing seemed to nestle itself perfectly into the sound. Like an infernal backing track, but pushed right forward in the mix. "Just answer the fucking phone," I grimace. My neck spasms for a moment. The man upstairs paces along the room again, pausing briefly. For a split second, I imagine him reaching down to take the receiver from the cradle. What's that? Silence? Has it stopped? Ring, 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 ring. My mind is playing tricks now. Of course he's not going to answer it. I stick a plastic container of frozen food, I don't know what it is, into the microwave and turn it on. The extractor fan goes on too, but still, the ringing persists. I pummel my fist against the kitchen counter, then remember I may be being too loud for Mrs. I forget her name, next door, and halt my actions. At least I'm respectful to my neighbor's feelings. I turn on the TV again. The volume goes up, and I sit on the carpet before it. Some guy is being accused of cheating on his wife. He obviously has, but the lie detector results are in. There is silence as the host pauses, eating up precious seconds before he reveals the results. The audience holds in a collective breath. In the studio, you could hear a pin drop. But here, in my world, there is ringing, ringing, ringing. The microwave pings. In time with that fucking phone, or maybe I just imagined that it did. I'm not even hungry. Which is just as well, as the food's been on far longer than it should have been. It's impossible to tell where the container ends and the food begins. I slam it in the bin, kicking the imitation metal plastic casing and setting it in a noisy pirouette. The sight is rather hypnotic, but it only lasts a second or two. I catch my reflection in the window and shake my head at myself, as though I'm sharing a decisive thought with a stranger. What the fuck? I ask my reflection. He looks mad. He agrees. I punched my finger against the numbers on my phone. At least one phone isn't ringing. Jack will know what to do. But as the number connects, I already know he won't answer. Jack will be out tending the gardens or helping someone with a stuck window or putting away someone's shopping, because that's the kind of guy Jack is. Warden isn't his official title, but he's the man who gets stuff sorted in the block. Any problems? Talk to Jack. But Jack isn't answering, obviously. Hearing the ringer from my own phone's receiver just makes me crazier. It's like I've got it in stereo. I put the phone down and wonder whether I'm actually hearing things. Is there a small band of construction workers making changes in the infrastructure in my mind, drilling away the old parts of my synapses that need updating for a new modern age? Ring, 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 fucking ring. It feels like it. I splash cold water on my face, turn on the shower, flush the toilet, but nothing works. I even stuff the toilet paper into my ears, but it seems the more I try and disguise the sound, the louder it gets. "Ugh!" I scream, kicking the door frame. It does nothing for my mood, or for the door frame. This is sending me insane. I try Jack again, holding the phone at arm's length. I wait for the answering machine to finally kick in. "Hi there, this is Jack. Sorry I'm not in the office right now, but leave me a message and I'll be out to help you as soon as I can. You take good care now." The beep explodes in my head like someone has blown a whistle at point-blank range. "Yeah, Jack. Can you hear this shit?" I hold the phone aloft, hoping the noise will translate through the mouthpiece. "It's the guy upstairs, you know, the hairy one. The phone's been going for fucking hours. Sort him out, would you?" I hang up, instantly regretting my attitude. Jack and I get on, but we aren't friends. Perhaps my rant will bring his finger to the delete when he listens to the message. If it was me, mine would. Am I actually losing my mind? I wonder whether there is a phone ringing or whether it's just the inner sound of some kind of emotional breakdown. I slam myself in my favorite armchair, which is worn through to the wooden armrest and smells a bit musty. It's been a good friend over the years. I stamp my feet on the equally worn carpet. The empty glasses on the coffee table quiver in fear, as though there's an army approaching from somewhere in the distance. My frustration is unabating. I thrust myself to standing and march back and forth as though I am the vanguard of this invisible army. I gaze out the window. It's a dreary day. Below, the roads are shiny with the puddles of rainwater, and cars and buses pass along slowly. The depressing weather does give me a few seconds of respite, though. But then I'm back exactly where I was. Ring, 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 ring. Will this ever stop? Have I died and this is my punishment? Given the choice between shoveling shit and rotting flesh for eternity in the fire pits of hell and this incessant ringing, I'd be cleaning my shovel already and packing the sunscreen. Time is dragging, or is it? I don't know how long I've been waiting for my phone to ring, with Jack cheerfully telling me he's on to it. But he won't call. Why would he? I was hoping it wouldn't come to this, but I'm going to have to sort this out myself. Trepidation infects my legs as I stand in the stairwell. What am I going to say? The man upstairs is someone I've mostly avoided for my 3 years living here. I've heard stories about him, violent stories. How he's someone not to be messed with. His bearded face hides any emotion he may have, although his eyes have always burned into me when I've seen them, warning me just to leave well alone. I admit it. I'm scared. But what do I have to lose? He could knock me out with one punch. At least I'd be free from that ringing. In a flash of epiphany, I see this as the only way I can rid myself of this torture. I take a tentative step upwards before the adrenaline surges from somewhere, and I'm almost galloping up the stairs. The sweat is pouring down my brow. I blame it on the heat, but it's cold in the stairwell. Cold and desolate. No one uses the stairs. The elevator has been recently updated, and is yet to reek of piss and body odor. so the stairs have become a no man's land. The ringing is muffled in the insulated stairwell, but it's still there. It won't allow me to block it out completely. In seconds, I reach the next floor. The corridor up here seems even more lonesome and depressing than mine. Yet there is one sign of life. Yes, a ringing telephone. My ears buzz, anticipating each shrill as though the intonation has been drilled into my mind where it shall stay forever. Even in death, I feel I shall be tormented by the sound. I pause for the briefest of moments after raising my fist in front of his door. Will I go through with this? The question hasn't even reached my decision center before I'm banging on the door like a victim pleading to be released from the clutches of a depraved madman. "Oi, you in there? Open the door." I don't stop to hear whether he's approaching. I'm now pounding with both fists. "Open the fucking door. You inconsiderate bastard. Open the door or I'll answer your fucking phone." Am I crying? Are those tears I can feel beneath my eyes? No, it has to be the sweat. Am I that desperate to be rid of this that I'm shedding tears at the prospect of not being able to stop it? This is madness. Ring, 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 ring. Shut the fuck up. The door is beginning to give with each strike. The frame is splintering and my hands are burning, turning wet and slimy. I inspect one fist whilst the other continues to demand entry. There's blood there. I ignore it and continue to bang on the door. The red blotches on the wood declare the level of my desperation. Ring, 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 ring. My fists are pummeling the door in rhythmic quality with the phone on the other side. My hands are now hurting too much to continue, and they fall, defeated, to my sides. I put an ear to the wood. My frenzied breaths fall in time with the phone. My exhalations are perfect quavers to the ring's 4x4 tempo. I raise a foot to make contact. I surprise even myself as my boot splits the door. Another kick. Another. A scream escapes my mouth, and I can't believe it was concocted by my own vocal cords. In a few seconds, the door has a vertical crack that I can put my head through. Shouting, "Here's Johnny," would be appropriate, were I in the mood for cult references. "Hey, I broke your door, you bastard!" I reach through the hole and fumble at the lock. The ringing is louder than ever now. It's trying to halt me, but I won't let it. Inside, the hallway is dark with just a hint of light trying to break through from somewhere. I'm in a nightmare, unable to wake myself from the incessant ringing that is punching deep inside my head. I stumble forward. My eyes eventually adjust, and a hazy fog appears around me. I cough as I inhale the fog, and wave a hand in a vain attempt at ridding it. My boots stick to the carpet as I walk. The kitchen to the left hums with flies as they devour the remnants of a meal. The stench of rot briefly pulls my attention from the phone, but as I cover my face with my sleeve, the ringing intensifies. A sting of acid burns in my throat as I swallow back the vomit trying to escape its home. Ring, 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 ring. Am I wearing headphones? Is the volume up to 11 or maybe even 12? After what seems like hours, I enter the living room and see him. Through the haze, he looks like a giant mass of hair sitting there. I attempt to speak, but something stops me. The smell, the fear, the phone. I want to scream. Maybe I just did. But the ringing engulfs all other sounds. The man watches me from his nicotine-stained chair. He's naked. His hair acts as clothing. He's like a human dog or something. But even all that hair can't disguise the malnourished appearance of his body. The skin sags from his limbs like worn leather. His gaze fleets around me as though he's watching something. But there's no one else there. My eyebrows knot. Can he see the anger in my face? Am I displaying the animosity I'm feeling? Or do I just look like a frightened child covering my face, shielding my nose from a fart? The lights turn on in a catalysmic flash. The brightness takes me by surprise, and I almost lose my balance. There, in the corner of the room. The phone flashes as it rings, or is that just my imagination? It's hard to tell what's real anymore. This ringing has taken what was left of my sanity, and I feel I will never return to normality now. I'm so close. Just a few steps and I could bring this torture to an end. Why am I hesitating? My neck throbs as the blood threatens to explode from the vessels containing it. Why is this so difficult? Walk, just walk and pick up the phone. No. My gaze is drawn to the man who's holding up a hand, showing me a quivering, bloody palm. Don't touch it. The man shakes like a pathetic child. Shut the fuck up, I tell him, my confidence suddenly rising. Now driven by some great unknown force, I stride over the phone. I sense the man standing up. As I reach out my hand, he grips my shoulder, his fingers forcing themselves into my muscles, causing them to cramp. I swing around and land a punch somewhere in his bearded face. My knuckles crunch and the pain it brings shoots along my whole arm. The man stumbles and eventually falls. I feel the thud through my feet but cannot hear it. I'm numb to everything but the ringing. I look back at the phone, my sole purpose here. Seriously, man, don't. His voice is a desperate cry, like an abandoned dog's. My hand grasps the receiver, and I take a moment to wrap my aching fingers around it like I'm about to squeeze life from it. I need to savor this. The man is at my feet now, arms clasped around my leg like a toddler. He screams. I pick up the phone. The relief it brings is bittersweet. Instantly, silence surrounds me. Am I deaf? There's not a single sound. The man is no longer screaming. I pull my foot from his tired grip and still hear nothing. I'm breathing hard, but silently. Not even my temples thud as the blood throbs through them. Then I hear something. Is it a voice? Something repeating itself from somewhere. The phone. I look at the thing in my hand. It is smeared with blood, my blood. Was I really grabbing it that tight? I bring it to my face and inspect the damage. The voice gets louder. Well, hello there. Welcome. I know the voice on the other end, but can't place it. It's a man, old with a husky tone of a heavy smoker. He is well-spoken and strangely familiar. I'm so pleased you decided to join me. At the moment, everything disappears. I'm in darkness. Flashes of light dart around my peripheral vision, constantly evading my gaze as I try to focus. The man on the phone appears before me, but is gone before I have a chance to see him. He's still speaking, yet I've missed what he is saying. I try to return my attention to him. Who are you? I interrupt, muttering with my eyes closed. Or are they open? Please, the time for introduction has now passed. There is nothing more for you to comprehend. You have joined me, or should I say, joined us. Just tell me who the fuck you are and what you're doing. I want no part of this. This is what I want to say, but my throat is frozen and my jaws locked. I bring a hand to my neck to pull out the knife that's been surely plunged into my muscle, but there's nothing there. The sensation tearing through my head forces me to scream, but all is still silent. My throat grinds like metal on metal. My heart is on the brink of falling, and the pain in my chest stabs me viciously as it spreads to my brain and toes. This is agony. My body's on fire, burning from inside out. My innards are melting, oozing from the skin as it chars, the smell in my nostrils causing me to retch. And still, the well-spoken man speaks to me. I feel like I know him. I can tell you how delighted I am We all are. This is what your whole life has been leading up to. Isn't it just magnificent? The phone drops to the floor as my fingers gnarl, the muscles palsied. As the plastic thunders against the carpet, the room is once more saturated with light. My eyes squeeze closed, and I claw at them in a pathetic attempt to stop burning. The pain vanishes. A satisfying warmth blows through me, and I open my eyes. The hairy man withers on the carpet like a dying animal. The terror and misery in his features bring me close to vomiting. Then suddenly my ears awaken. His death throes are more terrifying than I could even imagine. He doesn't sound human. The intensity of his cries make the previously ringing phone seem like nothing. The hairy man makes eye contact, and there's a desperation in them. A last plea for me to save him, but I can't. In seconds, his body explodes. Bone fragments embed themselves in the walls and ceiling. Slime splatters against me, and I taste the rotten juice of the viscera. Then follows the gush of warm blood. Like a giant wave from the river of hell, it knocks me from my feet, surely to my doom. But the fall is surprisingly comfortable. My ass sinks gently into a familiar seat. My favorite armchair. I am home, but something is different. It's dark. I am not alone. Around me huddle an array of floating shapes. I frown, attempting to focus. There are people here, pale, translucent beings inhabiting a world that is theirs no longer. They all watch me with expressions of sadness and pity. They are crying. Can ghosts actually cry? The hairy man stands among them, his eyes wide and staring. He shakes his head in apology and mouths something. I tried, I think he says. My stomach rumbles, reminding me it hasn't been fed for a while. It had been the last thing on my mind, though. I attempt to stand, but it's as though I'm underwater, or more like under treacle. The effort to even lean forward brings a pain to my chest as my heart throbs violently. I'm already breathless with the exertion and in defeat, sit back in the chair. The ghosts still stare at me, engrossed with sorrowful understanding. There's a banging on my front door. I think it's been going on for a while. I can't remember anything. Each strike brings a fresh pang of pain through my temples. My body quivers, my muscles go into spasm. There's shouting along with the banging, an angry voice bellowing. Are these cries emanating from within my skull? The door sounds as though it's already come free from its hinges. There's someone in my apartment, someone furious with me, someone who wishes to do me harm. It's only then I realize my phone has been ringing this whole time. That was Answer the Phone by Morgan K. Tanner. You can find out more about Morgan at his website, morganktanner.com, Morgan K. Tanner, all one word, or follow him on Twitter at MorganTanner666. Our next story is Apartment 13 by Brian J. Smith. Brian has been featured in numerous anthologies, e-zines, and magazines in both the mystery and horror genres. His books, Dark Avenues, The Tuckers, Uncle Bubby, and 3 O'Clock, are still available on Amazon for Kindle. He recently completed a short story collaboration with his fellow author, Lenore Sagosky. He lives in southeastern Ohio with his 4 dogs, where he eats more than enough spicy food that no human being should ever consume. Already has too many books and buys more, never drinks enough coffee, and cheers on the Ohio State Buckeyes. He can be found at Twitter under Brian J. Smith 13, on Instagram under Buckeye Fan 37, and on Facebook under Brian Joseph. And this is his story. Apartment 13 by Brian J. Smith. Rob Cross sat on the overstuffed couch when the smell hit him. He didn't know what it was, but all he could think of was rotten eggs. The scent wasn't just a nuisance, but a reminder of what he neglected to do. He winced and made a low grumbling sound. A wave of nausea turned inside his stomach, and a sharp, bitter aftertaste collected in the back of his throat. Maybe Linda had been right. He thought about their earlier conversation. Linda had been quick to remind him about the smell this morning after breakfast and before their usual round of morning sex. She was standing in front of her bedroom mirror, slipping on a tiny blue earring into her left earlobe, when she said something that diverted his attention away from a blue jay perched on a tree branch. "What did you say, honey?" he asked. She fastened the top button of her floral print scrubs and rolled her eyes at him. "I asked you to go upstairs and ask Mr. Flowers about the god-awful smell." "Why don't we just call the landlord?" "I don't want to make a scene. If Mr. Flowers says it's nothing, then we'll call the landlord." "I'll do it," he said when he climbed out of bed. "You said the very same thing last week, and we were late for dinner with Tiffany and Mike." Her sarcasm stung him deeply. He bit down on his bottom lip to keep from saying something he'd regret later. When Linda Cross said something, he needed to do it. But so far, he hadn't. He didn't ask to fall from a 20-foot ladder and bounce his knee off the side of a company truck and be out of work for the past 4 months. If he had his way about it, he would already be dressed and out the door so he wouldn't have to hear her complain about the smell again. He despised having gone from handyman to house husband, and attributed her anger to the fact that now she was the primary breadwinner. He smelled plenty of chemicals in the past, but nothing that smelled like this. He would rather stick his head in a fresh bucket of tar than smell this stench again. If he ever smelled like this after a job, he'd burn his clothes before he even stepped through the front door. The smell coming from the apartment above was that bad. The microwave dinged, snapping him out of this morning's incident, but he didn't feel hungry anymore. He inhaled the aroma of the chicken-flavored rice, snapped the lid back in place, and slid the container back into the fridge. He grabbed 2 bottles of beer, plugged his cell phone in, fucking thing was never fully charged, and shut the door on his way out of his apartment. Cliffview Apartments was an open, H-shaped building with screened-in patios and a playground on the far end of the property. Neatly manicured bushes were rooted inside tiny gravel beds below each window. The carports out front were reserved specially for each tenant according to the number of their apartments. When he neared the steps, a familiar voice called out, "Hello, Rob." He winced at the sound of Carol Ebner's voice and spun around to her, flashing his best fake smile. His neighbor wore a bright blue jacket over a long dress, ankle-hugging socks, and black shoes. The wheels of her walker whined as she skulked toward him. "Hello, Carol." "How are you doing?" "Fine," he said. "I was just about to go up and check on Mr. Flowers up in 13. "So you smell it too," she said. "I've called him 100 times, but that awful smell, but he never answers the phone. Think the old dude died?" Rob paused. "When's the last time you seen him?" He hoped that she had recently so he could go back inside his own apartment. "About a week ago. He'd come home from fishing, and I was standing out there talking to the mailman. He had something cradled on his arm like a football, but he had a blanket draped over it. I asked him what it was, but he brushed me off." Her words left deep creases of confusion in Rob's forehead. Carol could spread gossip like a virus. He and Linda tried to avoid her so they wouldn't be sucked into her whirlwind of bullshit. He nodded as she spoke, pretending to believe every word she said. "Was that all he told you?" She went on. "You think someone would have called the cops by now, but I didn't want to make a big stink about it. No pun intended." "Well, I better go see Mr. Flowers. Thought I'd share a beer with him." He held up the bottles. "Talk to you later." He waited for her to disappear before heading upstairs. The closer he got, the more intense the smell grew. Maybe the old guy really was dead. A blue jay burst from an overhead gutter and gave a loud squawk. He flinched and grasped the railing in a white-knuckled grip. His muscles relaxed as his eyes scanned the promenade. The bird's shadow soared above the sidewalk like a floating crucifix. He shook off the smell riding on the sharp October breeze and walked up to apartment 13. He pressed the bell and waited for a response before he rang it again. "Are you okay, Mr. Flowers?" He knocked this time. "It's Rob from—" Suddenly, the door creaked open on squealing hinges. He peered around the kitchen, stepped inside, and set the beer bottles on the countertop. As with all other apartments, the stainless steel appliances were new, and the countertop dropped off into a small breakfast nook with 2 chairs. A horde of flies hovered above the nest of dishes cluttered inside the 2-sided sink. He looked into the living room. Tiny shards of broken glass were strewn across the living room floor, between the couch and television, winking in the soft sunlight. The breeze whistled through a fist-sized hole in the glass doors and sent the curtain into a hypnotic dance. His stomach knotted in fear at the possibility that he'd walked into a home invasion that was still in progress. It still didn't explain the smell. "Mr. Flowers?" He cursed under his breath and cautiously entered the hallway. At the end, thin shafts of multi-gray sunlight poured through the window blinds. Dust motes danced in the air as the smell was growing worse, but he'd been accustomed to it by now. "Linda and I wanted—" Rob's heart lurched as he stopped in his tracks and slapped the wall with his hands like suction cups. Mr. Flowers was lying across the bed in a white shirt and blue-striped boxers. His eyes were closed, but his lashes moved as if he was in a state of REM. His fingers twisting with the rise and fall of his chest. His breath escaped through evenly pursed lips the color of strawberries. In the soft sunlight, his once brown leathery skin looked like creamy porcelain. Something moved from under the old man's shirt, poking through the fabric. When he approached the bed, Rob noticed a large pink tube protruding from the middle of Mr. Flowers' stomach like a trachea. It dropped over the side of the bed and stretched towards the pocket of darkness on the far left corner of the room. The tube was connected to a giant vulva pink egg, hanging from a tiny pink thread embedded into the ceiling. It pulsated in rhythm with the tube as if it were lapping at whatever it was taking from him. A trellis of red and blue veins crept up the side of the thing before stopping at the top. Rob backed away from the bed and, lips quivering with fear, tripped over his right ankle. He gave a childless yelp as he sunk toward the floor and struck the carpet ass first. The impact jarred his bones and bounced the back of his head off the floor like a basketball. Stars filling his vision, he heard the slow rip of fabric coming from the other side of the room. He winced at the dull ache growing in the back of his skull when something fastened onto his right foot. The pain sat him up and spread rivers of pressure up and down his leg. A long pink tube began pulling him across the room. There was no explanation for this. He waited for someone to come barging out from behind a movie camera and tell him the truth behind all of this, but all he could feel was pain and the lingering tightness of his muscles. And then he remembered something. The news stories had been on television. There were men in lab coats combing the area looking for this thing. He thought of his neighbor Carol, saying that Mr. Flowers had brought something covered by a towel. How could he have brought it here in the first place? Couldn't he have just left it in the lake with all the other garbage? He began to scream. He pulled his foot back, bending his knee, and filled his ears with the sound of slow tearing cartilage. He felt the tube sliding away from his ankle, and when it finally gave way, he kicked it across the room. His knee gave a tearing sound, and this time he screamed in pain as well as fright. He spun around on his hands and knees and began crawling toward the living room when something clamped onto his left thigh, holding him in place. Rob sobbed behind tightly clenched teeth and tried to yank his foot back. The tentacle held on, pulling him back into the bedroom. He tried to place his bad knee onto the floor to kick it away, but the first tube snapped itself across the room and slipped under his left pant leg. This time, he tried for the bathroom. If he could just reach the bathroom door, he could use it for leverage to free himself. He pulled his arms out and slammed his body against the floor. Air burst from his lungs as shockwaves of pain jarred his bones. He made it. He was at the bathroom door. He rolled onto his side and braced at the doorway with both hands. His fingers pressing into the wood, his stomach and sphincter clenched as he pulled himself onto the bathroom. A strong, musty odor permeated from his clothes and skin. That same rotten egg smell was on him now. He felt something burrow into his skin, rooting around like a corded camera during a colonoscopy. His palms grew sweaty as his fingers began to slide off the doorway, one digit at a time. Something slid up his spinal cord, cracked at the air like a whip, and connected with the back of his head. He stretched his right hand toward the doorknob, now glistening in the sunlight pouring through the bathroom window, and gave a strangled cry as the darkness consumed him. When she got off work at 7 o'clock that night, Linda Cross wanted nothing more than to kick off her purple scrubs and relax. The once soft gray sky now had the gas blue glow of dusk with a bright pink horizon. Tree shadows bled across the promenade like deformed ink blots. "He's so hot," she whispered into her cell phone as she got out of her car. "He's got a job with the State Department and everything. He makes more money than the lump of shit I'm with now." Her best friend, "Wasn't I right about him?" "He's that and much more," she whispered into the phone as her eyes darted around for a witness. "After lunch, we went on to that motel." Linda stopped talking when she approached her apartment and saw the front door open. She hissed into the phone. She slammed her hand against her thigh, jiggling the key with her fist. "Can you believe this?" "What did he do now?" "He left that goddamn door unlocked," Linda said. "The fucking door's open. I swear sometimes I think his brain is inside his ass. I'll find out what's going on. Talk to you later." She killed the call and entered the apartment. She set her purse on the countertop next to Rob's iPhone and called his name. When she didn't get a reply, she figured there was only one place he could be. So Rob finally did something she told him to do. She slipped her cell phone into her pocket and started up the staircase, up to apartment 13. That was Apartment 13 by Brian J. Smith. You can connect with Brian on Twitter at BrianJSmith13 or on Instagram at BuckeyeFan37. I'll put links in the show notes for both Brian and Morgan's information. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Again, if you'd like to donate, please go to evilpodcast.com and hit the donate button. If you'd like to become a Patreon, go to patreon.com/evilpodcast. Any amount is surely appreciated. And that concludes this episode of Evil Podcast. And remember, until next month, be good. Evil Podcast is copyrighted by Dennis Sarah. The stories in this episode are copyrighted by their respective authors. Music is by the talented Kevin MacLeod.